Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're unpacking a truly improbable career.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, one that starts with, silly walks and dead parrots and somehow ends with a knighthood for services to geography.
It just doesn't seem possible, does it?
Not at all. And our source material for this is just this extraordinarily rich biographical look at a public figure who somehow managed to define the high watermark of absurdist British comedy, then secure a BAFTA as a really serious dramatic
A
actor,
huge achievement.
and then, and this is the part that gets me, completely reboot his entire professional life to become one of the most recognizable and beloved global navigators on the planet.
It's arguably one of the most successful and definitely one of the most surprising professional pivots in, well, modern media history.
It has to be.
And we're not just, summarizing the history of the dead parrot sketch or that moment the Spanish Inquisition births onto the screen. Our mission is a bit deeper.
Right.
We are analyzing the arc of Sir Michael Palin, the man, the phenomenon, and really trying to trace how the skills required to play, say, a Gumby.
A character just designed for theatrical chaos.
Pure chaos.
Mm.
How could those skills possibly lay the groundwork for becoming the revered president of the Royal Geographical Society?
That's the core puzzle we're trying to solve for you today. How do you make that leap? How do you go from being an expert in staged, theatrical chaos to being this trusted, empathetic guide through some of the most politically sensitive and remote regions on Earth?
The fantastic question.
So we're going to distill the essential nuggets of knowledge, connect all of these surprising dots, and show you exactly why Sir Michael Palin earned that unofficial title of Britain's nicest man.
And more importantly, how his unique, unwavering curiosity defined not just his own career, but also fundamentally shifted how popular culture engages with global exploration for decades.
Okay, so to understand the man who would eventually travel the world, we have to start with the comedian he was first.
You have to. To understand the traveler, you have to understand the foundations. And when we look at Michael Edward Palin, born in Sheffield, 5 May 1943, you see a background that maybe prepared him to be this genial but very keen observer he would become.
And we've got a fantastic little detail right at the very start of his theatrical life. I love this. He's 5 years old.
Just 5.
And he's already, if maybe unintentionally, subverting gender roles on stage.
Absolutely. At 5 years old, he took the stage as Martha Cratchit in a school performance of Christmas Carol.
Amazing.
That detail is just wonderful because it confirms the spark was there, really early on.
Yeah.
But the path wasn't predictable. He had a very rigorous education. He went to Shrewsbury School, which is a big deal academically. And then he went on to study modern history at Brasenose College, Oxford.
And studying modern history, that feels really relevant, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, it requires deep observational skills, right?
Right.
An ability to synthesize all this complex data and a real patience with long-form narratives. Those are skills that would serve him so well later, both in his writing and definitely in his travel documentaries.
That's a great point. But it wasn't the academic focus that really launched his career. It was pure serendipity at Oxford.
At a party, of all places.
It was. The real creative aha moment happened not in a history seminar, but at a university Christmas party. Our sources confirm he performed and wrote comedy material there for the first time with another student, Robert Hewison.
And here's the lightning strike.
Here it is. Attending that party, watching that performance, was none other than future Python collaborator Terry Jones.
The sheer chance of that is just amazing to me. I mean, you could argue the entire trajectory of modern British comedy hinged on Terry Jones deciding to go to a party that night.
You really could. And that performance, it solidified this foundational partnership that would become the writing engine for so much of Python for years to come.
And they clicked immediately.
Instantly. The writing partnership with Jones was forged very quickly. Their first project together was actually this ambitious, but ultimately abandoned theatrical documentary about sex through the ages.
Of course it was.
Of course. But it just goes to show you their creative synergy was there. And it also shows a willingness, even that early, to tackle taboo or complicated subjects with a real intellectual curiosity. And that is a hallmark of Python.
And beyond Oxford, he also had this strong connection to, grassroots community theater. He won an acting award at a co-op drama festival, joined the Brightside and Carbrook Cooperative Society players. It suggests his training wasn't just this, highbrow academic thing. He was mixing in different worlds.
And that mixing is so key to the Python sensibility. So
Yep.
post-university, this is 1965, he starts in media as a presenter on a comedy pop show called Now.
Right.
But the real professional breakthrough for that partnership for Palin and Jones came when they started writing material for the really mainstream British variety circuit.
Shows like the Ken Dodd Show, the Billy Cotton Band Show.
Exactly. The Illustrated Weekly HUD. These were huge traditional shows.
And that's such an important detail, isn't it? When you think about the revolution that Monty Python's Flying Circus would become, anti-punchline, anti-sketch structure.
Total anarchy.
Total anarchy. It's remarkable that their formative experience was working inside the very traditional, established framework that they were about to completely blow up.
That tension is absolutely vital. They had to master the old forms before they could subvert them. But the true nexus point, the moment where the sort of atomic structure of Python was really created, was during their time as writers for David Frost's satirical news program, The Frost Report.
Okay, let's slow down here for a second because the Frost Report is so important. This wasn't just a meeting place. It was like a pressurized incubator for comedic genius.
That's the perfect way to put it. The writing team for that show included Palin and Jones, but crucially, it also had John Cleese, Graham Chapman, and Eric Idle. This was a first professional context where the core British members all worked side by side, and the atmosphere was, by all accounts, highly competitive, highly intellectual, and really focused on using wit to comment on social structure, which is something Frost was a master at.
And we know this experience was pivotal for the Palin and Jones partnership specifically, right, in terms of their narrative scope.
Yes. Our sources note that during the Frost Report era, Palin and Jones were also contributing material to other shows, and one of them was called A Series of Birds. And that show pushed them beyond just the short, sharp gags, the kind of thing you do for the Frost Report, and it forced them to tackle longer-form narrative structures.
So they were learning, iterating.
Exactly. It was a critical developmental step away from traditional sketch comedy, and it was setting the stage for the narrative-heavy absurdism that would define Python.
So before Python even existed, there was one last vital training ground that kind of brought the whole aesthetic together.
The final piece of the puzzle. The children's comedy show, Do Not Adjust Your Set.
This show is the bridge.
It absolutely was. It starred Palin, Jones, and Idle as writers and performers. And critically, it also featured David Jason, who would later become famous for Only Fools and Horses, and this is the key part. The animations were provided by an American, Terry Gilliam.
Ah, so Gilliam's in the mix now.
He's in.
Right.
And Do Not Adjust Your Set was anarchic, it was experimental, and most importantly, it integrated Gilliam's unique cutout animation style directly with the live-action performers.
And that shared aesthetic, that collision of live, sometimes gentle absurdity with this violent anarchic animation that became the fundamental signature of Monty Python's Flying Circus.
It did. And the actual formation of Monty Python's Flying Circus as a group, it all hinges on a very specific personal request from one key figure.
Who was that?
John Cleese.
So Cleese was the driver.
He was the essential catalyst. Cleese and Chapman had been offered a show by the BBC, but Cleese was highly reluctant to do a two-man show.
Why was that?
Well, partly due to the reported difficulty and, the volatility of working with Chapman. Cleese specifically wanted to collaborate with Palin, whom he admired greatly from their Frost Report days.
So Cleese reaches out to Palin, and Palin, who already has this fully formed, creatively harmonious team succeeding with Do Not Adjust Your Set, he makes a genius professional move.
He essentially brought the entire crew as a package deal. He said, if you want me, you get Jones, Idle, and Gilliam too.
Wow.
The source material really suggests that without Cleese's specific desire to work with Palin, the lineup would have been drastically different. Maybe it wouldn't have happened at all.
So Palin's genial nature, his professional reliability, it was the glue.
It was the glue that fused the Frost Report crew, Cleese and Chapman, with the Do Not Adjust Your Set anarchists Jones, Idle, and Gilliam. And that cemented the full legendary troupe that ran the television show from 1969 to 1974.
It's just fascinating how his amiable personality was already the essential binding agent for these huge creative egos, a trait that, would later make him such an indispensable diplomatic traveler.
It's the exact same skill set, just in a different context.
Okay, so when we talk about Palin's performance in Monty Python's Flying Circus, what are we really talking about?
We're talking about a performer with just extraordinary range. I mean, he often played polar opposites within the same episode, and that versatility was absolutely key to balancing the ensemble.
Yeah, when I think of his most memorable roles, they do fall into these two really distinct buckets. On one side, you have that pure, almost dangerous manic enthusiasm.
The manic roles are where the sort of repressed British eye just explodes. That's the lumberjack confessing his deepest desire to dress in women's clothing while trying to maintain this facade of rugged masculinity.
It's brilliant.
Or Herbert Anchovy, the aggressively enthusiastic, slightly unhinged host of the game show Blackmail. And of course, the Gumby character.
We have to talk about the Gumby. It's so iconic. The rolled-up trousers, the knotted handkerchief on his head, the flailing arms. What did Palin himself say about that character?
Palin described the Gumby as having moronic views that were expressed with extraordinary force.
That's perfect.
It's a very specific intellectual form of absurdity. You're taking the concept of utter stupidity and you're injecting it with this relentless, almost angry physical commitment.
It takes a huge amount of energy and control to make that kind of thing funny and not just, annoying.
Immense control. Now, pivot to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. The characters who are defined by their unflappable calmness.
And these roles were so necessary to anchor John Cleese's characters, who are always about to explode.
These are arguably his most beloved roles. Think of the man selling the dead parrot, just maintaining this utterly clinical composure while John Cleese's character unleashes a torrent of rage over deceased Norwegian blue.
It's Rustin.
Or the proprietor of the cheese shop, patiently informing the customer that no, they do not have a single piece of cheese in the shop, despite the name.
That dynamic is the absolute heartbeat of classic Python. He serves as the perfect straight man, or maybe more accurately, the imperturbable foil against the rising ire of Cleese.
The argument clinic is the best example of this tension. Cleese's character is just being driven to total frustration by the bureaucratic absurdity of trying to pay for an argument.
Right.
And Palin's character is the calm, rule-bound official who never once raises his voice or acknowledges the insanity of his own job.
And that ability to appear completely calm and reasonable in the face of insanity, that's a skill that translates directly, almost perfectly, to navigating real-life, unpredictable situations.
Like border crossings.
Or political volatility during his later travels.
Exactly. That is the crucial insight we promised. The unflappable demeanor, which he honed in comedy, became his primary defense and his observation mechanism as a traveler.
It's the same tool.
The exact same tool. And we shouldn't forget the structural utility he provided to the television show. He was the recurring X-Man.
The castaway with the beard and the torn clothes.
Who would often struggle to deliver the opening line of the show. It gave the otherwise chaotic program this tiny little structural reference point. A moment of stability before the chaos.
So, turning to the creative engine room, that partnership with Terry Jones remained incredibly potent throughout all the Python years.
The Palin-Jones writing duo was just foundational. They often worked together, sometimes sitting in separate rooms on the phone, developing ideas, and they maintained this high level of mutual respect.
And this led to them co-writing a sketch that has what I think is maybe the greatest comedic punchline reveal in history.
Oh, it has to be. The Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. It's the ultimate subversion of expectation. You have 40 minutes of unrelated chaos, and then suddenly they just interrupt the entire show. What made that sketch so structurally successful?
It wasn't just the surprise, it was a meticulous construction of the dialogue leading up to the reveal, with Palin in that key role of Cardinal Ximenez. The whole sketch is just an exercise in escalating absurdity, and its genius lies in the commitment of the performers to these ridiculous costumes and the now iconic repeated declarations.
Their partnership also extended into the musical side of Python, and they created some of the most enduring, singable parts of the show.
They co-composed several of the most famous Python songs, the Lumberjack song, which perfectly encapsulated that repressed desire of the character.
Spam, which is just brilliant chaos.
And then from The Meaning of Life, the controversial, satirical, but musically very complex, Every Sperm is Sacred.
And I admire that Palin also contributed solo musical work. It shows he had his own distinct kind of melancholy voice even within that group structure.
He did. His solo musical compositions included Decomposing Composers and the wonderfully absurd, slightly sad folk song, Finland. And this work showcases his interest in creating entire, contained worlds within a short piece, whether it's geographical or historical.
So the TV show wraps up in 1974, but the film work immediately takes over, giving the troupe a whole different medium to explore narrative.
And the film work demanded a completely different creative discipline than the short, non-sequitur sketches of the TV show. Palin co-wrote and starred in Monty Python and the Holy Grail in 1975.
Where he played Sir Galahad the Pure, but also the maniacal king of Swamp Castle.
Then Life of Brian in 1979, where he was just brilliant as Pontius Pilate and the exasperated ex-leper. And finally, The Meaning of Life in 1983.
And this shift to cinema was so critical in refining his long-form storytelling abilities.
It was crucial. And even after The Flying Circus ended, that foundational Palin-Jones partnership continued to thrive outside the ensemble dynamic. And that allowed them to stretch their wings even further into narrative comedy.
And that's where Ripping Yarns comes in, right? It ran intermittently over 3 years, from 76 to 79.
Ripping Yarns was a defining project for them. It allowed them to indulge their shared love of, old boys' adventure stories and 1930s era daring do, but with a comedic, absurd twist.
And crucially, it demanded sustained narrative.
Exactly. They were moving past 5-minute sketches and into 30-minute self-contained stories, focusing on these eccentric English characters in escalating, often bizarre circumstances.
So that long-form discipline, maintaining a single comedic tone and structure over a whole half hour,
was the perfect, unintended training for the narrative demands of documenting a 50,000-mile global journey later on.
So the ability to observe, synthesize, and structure a complete story, which he first honed with Jones in Ripping Yarns, became the bedrock for his future travel writing and documentaries. That's a powerful connection.
It's a direct line.
So as we move into the late 70s and 80s, Palin is clearly looking for roles that explore his versatility. He's trying to move beyond Python's shadow, but he's still relying on his old colleagues for a lot of creative opportunities.
Which makes sense. That's his creative family. But it is interesting how he began his non-Python screenwriting. Right at the start of this pivot, in 1971, he co-wrote a film called Percy.
Which was a bold choice.
A very bold choice for a post-Python project. Percy was about a man who receives a penis transplant.
Right.
The subject matter itself shows that continued interest in taking the taboo or the absurdly specific and trying to translate it into a feature-length narrative. It's maybe not his most critically acclaimed work, but it confirms his desire to write outside that Python framework.
He also maintained a really important working relationship with Terry Gilliam throughout this era. He was often the grounding presence in Gilliam's highly visual, fantastical worlds.
He was Gilliam's anchor. Palin played the peasant Dennis in the 1977 film Jabberwocky.
Similar to his cameo in Holy Grail.
Very similar. He then elevated that collaboration significantly, co-writing and starring in Time Bandits in 1981, playing Vincent. And then later, in 1985, he took on the much more sinister role of Jack Lint in Gilliam's dystopian masterpiece, Brazil.
Jack Lint. The seemingly benign bureaucrat who turns out to be a terrifying cog in the system of torture.
It's a chilling performance.
And playing a character like that, who seems nice, but represents this systemic evil, it really shows his ability to tap into the darker side of his genial persona.
It does. But the definitive moment for his serious acting career, the one that gave him that critical validation outside the Python world, was almost like a second Python reunion.
It has to be 1988's A Fish Called Wanda.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
This film, co-written by John Cleese, became the ultimate vehicle for showcasing Palin's dramatic capabilities. He starred as Ken Pyle, the stuttering, animal-loving mobster.
His performance in that role was just a revelation. It showcased his ability to handle physical comedy, extreme pathos, and emotional vulnerability all at once, and it led to a massive career peak.
A huge peak. For that role, he received the prestigious BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. This was definitive proof to the public and, maybe to himself, that he was more than just a comedian.
He had the chops.
He had the chops to deliver a complex, dramatic performance rooted in real empathy. And it's no coincidence that the character was defined by a severe stammer, which ties directly into a deeply personal issue we're going to discuss later.
That BAFTA win is the professional high point of his acting career, for sure. He did reunite with the main cast of Wanda for the sequel, Fierce Creatures, almost a decade later in 1997. But it's the anecdote around that sequel that really signals this emerging conflict between his acting career and his new life as a traveler.
The sources provide a wonderful illustration of his changing priorities. Immediately after filming Fierce Creatures, Palin didn't stick around for post-production.
He just left.
He promptly embarked on one of his long-form BBC travel journeys, and he only returned a year later, from halfway around the world, to the news that the film's original ending had completely failed with test audiences, and they urgently needed him back for reshoots.
That must have been an incredible moment for the producers, calling the BAFTA winner back from, the Arctic Circle because they need to fix the ending.
I can only imagine that phone call.
It confirms that by the late 90s, his travel work was already competing directly with his film commitments, and arguably, it was winning.
Travel was quickly becoming his passion and his priority. But before that took over entirely, he made a conscious effort to pursue genuinely serious drama and some deeply personal projects.
Right, like in 1991 when he wrote and starred in the film American Friends, this wasn't broad comedy at all. This was intimate, historically rooted drama.
The film was based on a real event in the life of his great-grandfather, who was a fellow at St. John's College, Oxford. By writing a period piece rooted in academic and personal history, he was showing a real desire for serious storytelling.
And in that same year, he got another significant dramatic validation.
He did. He played the central role of Jim Nelson, an embattled headmaster, in Alan Bleasdale's acclaimed Channel 4 drama series GBH.
And that got him a BAFTA nomination for Best Actor, this time in a leading role.
A leading role. So he's accumulating nominations across different genres, proving his versatility. But he still maintained his touch for sophisticated satire when the material was right, even decades later.
Like in The Death of Stalin.
He was perfectly cast in the 2017 satirical black comedy The Death of Stalin, playing the Soviet politician Vyacheslav Molotov. It shows his ability to inhabit real historical figures with dramatic weight, even when the setting is inherently comedic.
And before we leave this section, we have to mention that highly surprising yet strangely comforting detail about his near brush with mainstream Hollywood rom-coms.
Oh, the You've Got Mail story. Yes.
I love this.
He was actually cast in a supporting role in the 1998 Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan romantic comedy, a major studio picture.
Yeah.
His entire performance ended up on the cutting room floor.
No.
Gone completely. It's a hilarious, humbling detail that just reminds us of the capriciousness of Hollywood compared to the structured, self-directed freedom he had in his BBC travel work.
It really puts it in perspective. We should also acknowledge his significant contributions to voice acting and narration, which is a less visible but constant thread in his work.
He was an excellent narrator. He recorded the English-language audiobook version of Roald Dahl's Ezio Trott in 1994, bringing this gentle, charming sensibility to the reading. He also took on voice roles like Rat in the 1995 TV movie of The Wind in the Willows.
And Ernie Clicker in Arthur Christmas in 2011.
Exactly. And by 2013, the entire spectrum of his contribution to film and television was recognized when he received the BAFTA Academy Fellowship Award.
One of the highest honors in British media.
The highest. So we see the transition fully underway. The comedy legend becomes a recognized dramatic actor, only to find his true calling pulling him in a completely different direction.
Towards the world map.
So the transition from film star to global traveler, it wasn't instantaneous. It was gradual. And it started with a smaller, more contained passion project rooted in a very English eccentricity.
Trainspotting.
Trainspotting. His first travel documentary was an episode of the 1980 BBC series Great Railway Journeys of the World, and his episode was aptly titled Confessions of a Trainspotter.
It's a wonderful entry point.
The episode detailed a train trip from London all the way to the Kyle of Lochaulsh in Scotland. And what makes this so telling is the personal immersion. It wasn't just a travelogue. It was about his genuine enthusiasm for the journey. It wasn't playing a role. He was just being Michael Palin, the enthusiastic traveler.
And this early work immediately gave us an anecdote that just perfectly captures his self-effacing humor and his genuine fascination with things.
The famous story from the Kyle of Lochaulsh is excellent. He indulged his train-spotting enthusiasm to the absolute extreme. He actually bought the station's long metal platform sign.
He bought the sign?
Got the sign, and with characteristic absurdity and physical effort, lugged it all the way back to London with him. It perfectly blends the comic absurdity of Python with the sincere dedication of the explorer.
That's fantastic. But the reason he became the BBC's signature, decade-defining globetrotter is one of the greatest stories of professional serendipity. It all hinged on other people saying no.
It's the second major stroke of luck in his career, after Cleese seeking him out. His signature travel series began because two highly established figures in the genre, the veteran TV globetrotter Alan Wicker and the journalist Miles Kington, both turned down the first major project.
Which was?
Around the World in 80 Days with Michael Palin. This opened the door for Palin in 1989.
And the constraint of that first journey, based on the Jules Verne novel, was immediately what made it such compelling television.
Absolutely. The core mission of 80 Days was to follow Phileas Fogg's journey as closely as possible, and the critical constraint was no aircraft.
Which changes everything.
It immediately escalated the logistical challenges from a simple documentary into this high-stakes adventure. They had to rely entirely on boats, trains, balloons, and ground transport. And the sheer pressure of the Verne schedule, the race against the clock, that provided all the narrative tension.
And that constraint added real danger. The sources reveal a shocking moment where that danger became terrifyingly real during the final leg of the journey in the UK.
This needs careful consideration. During the journey, as Palin and his crew were racing back toward London, there was a devastating incident. The Clapham Junction rail crash.
One of the worst rail disasters in UK history.
Terrible. And Palin noted in the companion book that the rigorous self-imposed schedule they were following actually saved them. Because they had managed to arrive ahead of schedule, they were able to catch an earlier train.
So if they had been just slightly delayed, trying to make that 80 days deadline,
they would have been on one of the trains involved in the crash.
Wow. That is an incredibly sober reminder that these were not just pleasant jaunts. They were logistically complex operations carrying genuine real-world risk.
That near miss underscores the level of intensity and commitment required, and it probably strengthened the BBC's trust in him and his crew's ability to handle these high-stress situations.
So after the phenomenal success of 80 days, the blueprint was set, the floodgates opened, and we then saw this chronology of increasingly ambitious global journeys that defined his life and career for the next 3 decades.
They became defining fixtures of television, always structured around a grand, almost impossible premise. In 1992, we had Pole to Pole.
A monumental feat.
Just a monumental feat of traveling from the North Pole to the South Pole, attempting to follow the 30-degree line of longitude, primarily passing through Europe and the African continent.
And the complexity just grew from there. Full Circle in 1997 was arguably his most geographically daunting endeavor.
It was staggering. The goal was to circumnavigate the lands around the Pacific Ocean anti-clockwise, a total distance of 50,000 miles, starting on the tiny, isolated little Diomede Island of the Bering Strait.
I can't even imagine the logistics of that.
It demanded incredible resilience, patience, and logistical planning to link up all those disparate nations and isolated territories.
Then he did journeys focused less on geography and more on the historical or literary footprints of others.
That's where Michael Palin's Hemingway adventure came in 1999, retracing the footsteps of Ernest Hemingway across continents, moving from Europe to Africa. And this thematic approach allowed him to explore complex literary history while still maintaining that adventurous element.
And then he moved into tackling some of the world's most dramatic geographical features.
Sahara in 2002 was a massive undertaking, trekking around and through the world's largest hot desert. That was followed by Himalaya in 2004, traveling through one of the most rugged mountain regions on Earth. And then in 2007, he moved into contemporary geopolitics with Michael Palin's New Europe.
Journeying through Central and Eastern Europe to understand the post-Cold War landscape.
Exactly. And he didn't shy away from large, complex, diverse national studies either, like Brazil with Michael Palin in 2012.
Those large national documentaries allowed him to dive deep into a single culture's history, their environmental challenges, their social fabric. It's moving beyond just pure transit.
It is. However, his most recent journeys mark a significant thematic shift. He's often tackling politically isolated or dangerous destinations.
This later period, often with Channel 5 and ITN, it involves much higher geopolitical stakes. Tell us about the North Korea documentary.
Michael Palin in North Korea in 2018 was perhaps his most complex assignment. It documented his highly restricted visit to the isolated country, a trip that coincidentally occurred just around the time of the historic April 2018 Inter-Korean Summit.
Filming in North Korea requires immense diplomatic tact.
And again, that unflappable patience we talked about earlier. Navigating state scrutiny and these tightly managed visits. It was released in the U.S. as North Korea from the Inside.
And he followed that up with equally challenging destinations.
Yes. In 2022, he filmed Michael Palin, Into Iraq, traveling through a nation still grappling with conflict and political instability. And most recently, Michael Palin in Nigeria in 2024. The shift is palpable.
From epic geographical challenges to
the complex, high-risk political and social reporting. And the upcoming announcement of Michael Palin in Venezuela for 2025 suggests that this new focus on contemporary political landscapes is going to continue.
What's remarkable is that these documentaries were never just television shows. They were always packaged as these serious multimedia projects that contributed significantly to travel, writing, and geographic discourse.
Absolutely. Following each major trip, Palin published a companion book that was essential for dedicated readers. And these books were not just transcripts. They offered additional context, deeper personal insights, reflections that weren't included in the program.
And they were always beautifully illustrated by his longtime stills photographer, Basil Powell.
Always.
And this massive output created a phenomenon so significant it earned its own unofficial sociological term, the Palin effect. We need to define this properly for you.
The Palin effect is the documented socioeconomic phenomenon where regions, countries, or specific sites visited and documented by Michael Palin suddenly experience a significant surge in tourist interest and arrivals immediately afterward.
It's a powerful testament to his influence as a trusted guide. Where do we see the most concrete examples of this?
The sources really highlight the significant increase in tourism interested in Peru after he visited sites like Machu Picchu during Full Circle. His genial, curious approach just demystified these locations, making them seem accessible and desirable to the average British or global traveler.
He literally became a global cultural trendsetter.
He did, and to confirm his personal connection, he named Peru's Pongo de Manique, which is this dramatic canyon, his favorite place in the world in a 2006 survey.
I think the key here is not just that he went, but how he went. He travels as the curious amateur, approachable and genuinely fascinated, which resonates far more deeply than an expert academic guide ever could.
Precisely. His presence validated the destination for mass tourism. And this influence, which blended exploration with massive public outreach, led to perhaps the most unexpected institutional validation of his career.
The moment the comedian became a geographer-in-chief.
He served as president of the Royal Geographical Society from 2009 to 2012. And this wasn't merely a ceremonial title. It was formal, peer recognition of the value and legitimacy of his travel work. It was an acknowledgement that his documentaries achieved more for public awareness of global geography than many academic programs combined.
And that provides the perfect bridge to our final section, looking at his wider impact and the official honors he accumulated.
If Palin's career were a Venn diagram, curiosity would be the central overlapping circle. And this curiosity wasn't just confined to comedy or geography, it extended significantly into the world of visual arts and history.
He used his documentary platform occasionally to highlight figures and topics that just fascinated him personally. It really demonstrates his breadth of interest.
Exactly. He presented several documentaries focused on artists, showcasing his depth of research and his appreciative eye. In 1997, we saw Palin on Redpath, focusing on the Scottish painter Anne Redpath. Then in 2000, he focused on the bright side of life, covering the Scottish colorists.
And he used his global traveling skills to explore European artists as well.
He did. He presented Michael Palin and the Ladies Who Love Matisse in 2004, and a particularly interesting one in 2005, Michael Palin and the Mystery of Hammershoy.
About the Danish artist Wilhelm Hammershoy.
Yes, who is known for his serene, almost melancholic interior scenes. And it's such a striking contrast, isn't it? The Monty Python performer exploring this quiet, contemplative art.
He also focused on American artistry and history.
In 2013, he filmed Michael Palin in Wyeth World, exploring the life and work of the American painter Andrew Wyeth and the people who inspired his subjects in Pennsylvania. And on the historical side, he presented The Last Day of World War I in 2008 for the BBC's Time Watch series.
And that focused on the tragic, poignant detail of soldiers who died in battle even after the armistice had officially taken effect.
It shows his interest in the specific human element of these huge historical events.
So, moving to his personal advocacy, there's one thread that connects his acting career directly to his philanthropy, and that's the issue of stammering. This is a story of personal commitment driven by family experience.
This is one of the most powerful and meaningful elements of his legacy. His awareness and understanding of stammering, it stemmed from his own father's experience. And that connection informed his work, most notably the character Ken Pyle in A Fish Called Wanda, who had a severe stammer.
So we see the trajectory, a personal experience, which is then filtered through his art, the BAFTA-winning role, which then led...
He co-founded the Michael Palin Center for Stammering, and this center provides specialist therapy and research, and it turned a painful family experience and a memorable character into this powerful, sustained philanthropic effort that has helped thousands of people.
He also maintained a robust profile supporting causes that were closely tied to the ethics and challenges of his travel work, like transport and the environment.
He's been president of the Campaign for Better Transport since 1986, which is a perfect fit for the man who circumnavigated the globe without flying. He also supports the Urban Tree Charity Trees for Cities, helping plant their 1 millionth tree.
And launching the Edible Playground Project in 2015.
Right, focusing on bringing food-growing opportunities to inner-city school playgrounds.
And his travel experiences empowered him to engage in specific international advocacy for indigenous rights, too.
He used the credibility he earned during his journeys to lend powerful support to the Dongria Khan tribe in India in 2010. They were resisting mining on their land by the Vedanta Resources Corporation, and Palin cited his previous visit to the Nyamgiri Hills as the basis for his commitment, arguing that the land's sanctity had to be protected.
So finally, let's bring it all together with the highest honors. The BAFTA confirmed his artistic status, but his royal recognition is uniquely substantial among the Python members, and it reflects the totality of his second career.
He was first appointed a Commander of the Order of the British Empire, a CBE, in 2000. But the definitive honor came in the 2019 New Year honors. He was appointed a Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, a KCMG.
That is a very high honor, and the citation is the key takeaway here, isn't it?
It's the synthesis of this entire deep dive. The knighthood was specifically awarded for services to travel, culture, and geography.
Not just for entertainment.
Not just entertainment. It confirms that the establishment officially recognized the monumental cultural and geographical impact of his pivot. And what makes this detail so important is that he is the only member of the Monty Python team to receive a knighthood.
That KCMG truly symbolizes that the man who specialized in the Ministry of Silly Walks ended up charting actual, complicated, real-world journeys.
And he has some wonderful idiosyncratic tributes, reflecting his varied career. Asteroid 9621 is named Michael Palin.
An asteroid.
And because of his lifelong dedication to rail travel, 2 British trains have been named after him, a Virgin Train Super Voyager and a National Express East Anglia unit.
An asteroid and 2 trains. That's a marvelous tally. But my favorite tribute is the smallest, most charmingly ironic detail, which feels like it was written by Python itself.
I know exactly what you mean. The commemorative stone inside the Globe Theater, marking donors. Palin has a stone there.
But it's famously misspelled as Michael Palin.
With 2 L's. It's an accidental, yet perfectly fitting piece of permanent absurdity to cap off his list of achievements.
And before we wrap up, we should touch on the personal connections that anchored his life and provided source material for his writing.
He was married to Helen Gibbons for an extraordinary 57 years, from 1966 until her death in 2023. They first met incredibly early, in 1959, on holiday, and that specific chance encounter was so significant that he fictionalized it in his 1987 BBC teleplay, East of Ipswich.
And his children have followed creative and conservation-focused paths.
His daughter, Rachel, is a BBC TV director, involved in major programs like MasterChef, The Professionals. His son, William, is the director of conservation at the Old Royal Naval College, Greenwich, overseeing the crucial restoration of the Painted Hall.
And bringing it full circle back to the comedy.
William, as a baby, appeared in a photograph role in Monty Python and the Holy Grail as Sir not appearing in this film.
Of course he did.
The Python link just runs through every aspect of his life.
So we have journeyed through an unparalleled career. We've tracked the transformation of Sir Michael Palin from a foundational member of the British comedy elite through the dramatic peak of a BAFTA win for a fish called Wanda into his decades-long institution-defining second act as a global explorer. His journeys literally reshaped tourism in places like Peru, creating the Palin effect, and earned him formal recognition from the Royal Geographical Society and from the Crown.
And the overarching theme is the synthesis of all those disparate skills. He learned the observational discipline he needed to write structured long-form comedy and ripping yarns, and he mastered the unflappable demeanor required to foil John Cleese in the argument clinic. And both of those skills became indispensable for surviving and documenting complex journeys through North Korea, Iraq, and the Sahara. And his advocacy, particularly for the Stammering Center, confirms that his empathy wasn't just a performing trait, it was a defining personal commitment.
When you reflect on the totality of his career, I mean, the sheer intellectual and physical energy required to move from playing a Gumby with moronic views expressed with extraordinary force to being appointed a Knight Commander for services to geography, it's clear the common denominator is that insatiable, empathetic curiosity.
That's it.
He approaches every subject, whether it's a fictional argument clinic or a real-world political hotspot, with the exact same open, observational eye.
And this raises an important question for you to mull over. We often assume that true expertise requires narrow focus and intense specialization. But the extraordinary success of Sir Michael Palin suggests the opposite, that the most effective, most trusted guide through life's complex territories, whether they be comedic, dramatic, or geographical, is often the one who approaches the world with a generalized, unwavering, and deeply empathetic curiosity. Perhaps the greatest skill isn't knowing the answer, but knowing how to genuinely ask the question again and again.